gentlemen. First item on the agenda tonight is consider approving the minutes held from January 26th.
I make a motion, we approve those minutes and sign the disbursement warrant.
May 2nd.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is consider Oakland's Fire Department applying for a safer grant.
Chief Kaufman approached me last week and he presented a grant opportunity to me. What it is he's looking to apply for this. It's potentially up to 2 full-time employees for 2 years. He's been struggling filling his shifts on weekends, and he feels that this is something that could help resolve the problem for a couple of years. His intent at the end of the 2 years is to possibly look at bringing on a full-time employee. We're not committed to do that by this grant. This represents between $180,000 to $200,000 for the town of Oakland. So this would be something that we could make a choice at the end of it or at the beginning of it, whether we want to use this as a contractual period for hiring some younger people to fill some needed time, or to use this as possibly a stepping stone to get into a full-time position for the fire department. So he asked me, he wasn't able to be here tonight, he asked me to present this to you, open it up for discussion, and possibly see if we could get a vote on whether or not he should apply for it. The application process is fairly quick. We have to get it in, I believe, by the end of February. Decision on this wouldn't be until September. You have what I have on this. Any questions?
I have a couple, do you look, did somebody else?
Yeah, Mark did.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
I just think that we have the most, or one of the most efficient fire departments in the state of Maine, and it's completely volunteer from what I understand, but the volunteers do get paid something. I think it changes the direction that that is going, and I don't like the change.
Was he looking at, one of my questions was, the weekend, it's mostly weekends, he's looking to fill the area, or is it nights?
He has an aging staff.
Yeah.
I mean, his people working over there for the most part are getting older, and he's relying mainly on the same group of people. And his problem is on weekends. To answer your question, yes.
So that's where he's looking at more than nights.
And full time obviously would be 40, so he'd be able to put evening times on maybe part of the week and then get through weekend coverage. But that's the area that he's having a problem with.
Dawn.
I guess I'd like to, just see or have some information prior to giving a full blessing to going forward, if that's what we want to do. And I guess some of the council may have a better grasp of where we are, but I know we've been adding per diem people each of the last 4 or 5 budgets to the point where I think we now have 5 people that are offered a 1-day-a-week type thing, or some might do more than 1 day. And I don't know how they're used. Do some of them work on weekends? Is it the same person? Do we have 12 people to choose from, and they all could do it, and he has to make a schedule each week and piece things together? Do any of them work in the evenings now? Do any of them work weekends now? I guess I'd like to have a little more information of what we're actually doing presently, and then what would these people do? Would they supplant those people? Would they be called instead of that? Would we be saving money by not hiring our 5 daily per diem for 2 years? Or would this be in addition to that? Right now, if we're not covering all of those days, is that just money that we're not using in our budget that we put out there, but because we don't have people, we don't do it? So I guess I'd like to really know a lot more of the details of what we're actually confronting now and how this might parlay with that. And I guess we have to be pretty forward-thinking, because we've been here before with other grants that when you hire them for 2 years, at the end of the 2 years, there's a lot of pressure to keep them on board, and at what cost. I'm not saying I'm against it or for it, but I think that's been the track record, and I think we'd have to say whatever we keep going forward is going to be added onto the budget, $100,000, $200,000 increase in year 3. So I just think we need to look at the information, see where we are, It's one of these unfortunate ones we've been through before. And by the way, we have one more meeting before this has to be submitted, and that one meeting happens to be February 25th, and it has to be in by February 29th.
When do we meet with the fire department? When do we meet on the budget with the fire department?
I don't have that
That's
with me, but I think it's.
I just, my thought was maybe you could give us a little, if he's looking at his budget, that'd be a good time to ask these questions. It might not delay the process.
I believe he's going to be.
Is it tomorrow night or the next? I think it's tomorrow night.
Yeah, it's tomorrow night, so.
You know?
And the other possibility, again, I'm not saying I'm for nor against it, I need to have a little more information and think through it. Is there a possibility that you apply for this, and they don't decide until June, and come June, we say, well, we've thought about it for the last 4 months, and we really don't think we wanna do it?
You can turn the grant down. They're gonna decide September. And my understanding is that this is gonna take the place of the per diem personnel that this is something that, from what I gather, that just presented itself within the last week. And so this is a deal that he's going to eliminate his part-time people, or some of them, to bring on this full-time position. But then again, there's an end date to this. And you're right, there's a decision to make at the end date, because his intent is to come up with a full-time position by the end of it. And so you're absolutely spot on that. But that's a decision that can be made at that time too.
And I think, like Mike said, maybe some of the questions that I would have now is no sense throwing them out until we have David be able to respond to them, and that might be something that would come up
Well,
with.
it's all about budget.
How's he doing the budget? You
Yeah,
know,
I mean, 'cause
you
that
just
was-
really have to put it in the budget, so if you don't get it, you still got it, but if we do get it, then do we,
And he is asking for more per diem hours this year. I mean,
in addition to,
in addition to what he's received in the past, because of the fact that he's having a hard time filling calls.
He has an item in the budget for an additional person
Yes. Yeah.
for a year.
Yeah.
I don't see any problem with letting him proceed on his, get this application in and see where it goes. I mean, we have,
You can always turn it down.
right, I mean, we don't have to accept it.
That's correct.
Maybe we won't like anything they put on it for restrictions or whatever at the time, and we can turn it down, but,
Mhm.
I don't see any problem with letting him get in on the thing as early as he can and maybe see where it goes. But he's gotta have a little while to make his thing out here. I'm sure it's a complicated procedure to fill it out.
It's a grant process,
Yeah.
and there's no guarantees on grants. I mean, he can apply for it, and whether he gets it or not, that's to be seen.
Right.
And
Whether
then
we
if he
accept
does
it when
get
he
it,
does get it.
You can certainly make a decision whether or not to accept it. And if you do decide to accept it, we can benefit from 2 years' worth of free labor out of it, cutting his cost in, per diem. I mean, you could look at it as a financial bone that way, and then make the decision as it nears its end, whether you're gonna go and let these people go or to keep them on.
I don't know, maybe somebody else does, but I know if you live in town where there's fire hydrants, it affects your insurance rate. Does it have any effect on it if we have a person, a full-time firefighter at the fire station, rather than just call people? I wonder if there's any effect on it.
I wouldn't know that.
I don't know either,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if anybody does.
Yeah.
The fire hydrants certainly do.
Yeah,
Yeah, I couldn't answer that.
I don't know.
I think most of it's the distance from the fire department,
I think on mine, it asks the distance you are from a hydrant or
plus the
something like
distance from
that,
the fire
but,
department,
I don't know that anything's ever been said on there about if you have a full-time fire department in your town, whether it make a difference or not.
So basically, what he's looking for is authorization to apply for it. And if you'd like to speak with him tomorrow about it, that's certainly perfect, yeah.
Yeah, I would, it's a double-edged sword when you do this, because if one of the people or two of the people that are already on the fire department, and then someone else doesn't get on, then it's a volunteer fire department, and then what's happened, they're getting, you didn't hire me, I'm moving on.
Well,
And her feelings could be hurt too.
Well, I mean,
And we could lose numbers.
Yeah.
And then, well, you're cutting my hours, why am I gonna stay here, I'll go somewhere else. So we have to really be very, and I think David's very cautious. I'm just throwing it out there as devil's advocate, and then my other question was, who pays the insurance on them?
According to Dave, the reason for the 180 to 200,000, it covers all
Everything.
costs,
Like food, sewer,
everything that
everything.
there's no commitment from the financial commitment from the town whatsoever. This is a free boat if he gets the grant.
Good.
Do we have to worry in the distant future about unionization if we have a department of 3 employees?
I don't know. Yeah, that would be a question that I could find out for you though. I think that anytime you have full-time employees, you've always, there's a chance of unionization. I mean, you know, it's
I would have no problem endorsing that he continue with the application process, but that he understands, or that we understand, that we're not necessarily endorsing this proposal at this point. Over the course of the 5 or 6 months that he has to do it, you know, a lot of these types of things will be spoken of, and we'll see the actual budget and who's actually gonna be hired and what's gonna happen to our pool, and we might at that time decide, no, this isn't really in our best interest, so.
and he anticipates that there's a chance of that happening.
But I know a lot of times, even when there was a town meeting vote at one point to add a police officer through the DARE program, and the town meeting approved it. Well, we didn't get the grant. 2 or 3 years later, we were able to get the grant again, and we relied on the fact that the town meeting had approved it as approval to go ahead and do it. So we were sort of caught in the sense that, well, what do? Town's already said do it, we don't really think at this point it's the best thing to do. In this case, I guess we just wanna go out and say, we don't know if this is the best thing to do. We're very interested in hearing more, having you, go forward on it, but we won't be able to make a final decision as to whether we think we wanna do this until the time in the future when we have to make that decision.
I'd make a motion that we direct Chief Coughlin here to proceed with his application process with the understanding that we're gonna discuss it again and decide how far we wanna go with it.
Second motion. Second, all in favor? Opposed? Next one's to consider authorizing town of Oakland Police Department to accept drug forfeiture bills.
We have received another one. This is from the district attorney's office. We've got $1,320 that we're looking to receive, and they need council approval in order to take this money from the town. I have some paperwork here to sign, if you're willing to vote to accept it.
I'd make a motion, we accept this drug forfeiture money.
I just have a question for curiosity. What if we said no? Where would the money go?
The money would be given to the other departments who participated in this drug bust. And this is our share of a joint effort that was put on Captain Stubbert's part of the main drug enforcement. And so when they have multiple agencies that participate in the drug raid and there's something that's removed, the 3 agencies or 4 agencies share in the proceeds.
It said here under D that any forfeited items shall be transferred to the state of Maine general fund. The town legislative body
Okay.
fails to approve transfer.
Yeah. Usually in the past, anything that I understood in the past is divided amongst the other agencies. And this might be something new that I'm not aware of.
What do we typically use the drug forfeiture monies for?
That money goes into a separate account. Doug manages that account, and the police department uses it for equipment. From what I understand, they need a couple of radios, and Captain Starbert said to me just the other day that he had enough money in his drug forfeiture account to purchase those 2 radios.
Are we allowed to use any of that money for budgeted items?
I don't know that. I would have to, I don't even dare guess on that. I'd have to find that out.
I don't think there's any restrictions on it, I think, because isn't that how they bought their speed trail, the
Yes.
speed sign trailer, was
Yes,
that
it
some
is.
of that money?
In the past, it's been used for police department purchases.
Right.
That's what it's been used for.
Motion was made that we do accept it. Do I get a second? All in favor? Thank you. Next item is the manager's report.
The first thing I have on the list is we have Boyd Snowden here to speak to us about removing his plan and dollar value that he's placed on I&I that's going to Waterville. And we'd like to spend a little time talking to you about it.
So we went over this at the, 2 meetings ago, I guess it was, where we began talking about, have been kind of tallying what we've been sending to Waterville and comparing that with, the water district record, which I received from Jan. Basically, the way I figured it is everything we send to Waterville is metered, 2 different locations in Waterville, one's on KMD, First Park, and the other's on the Webb Road. And so we know how many gallons we're sending to Waterville, and what we did is I took the information that Jan provided from the water district, which is, you know, consumption on the water district side, and anybody, there's only one customer that we have that is not on a water district meter. Everybody else that is on the sewer is also on the water. So basically, I took those water district numbers, compared those with what we're sending to Waterville, and thinking, looking at that as a conservative basis, because obviously people water their lawns, they wash their vehicles, that's not going in the sewer. So even on a conservative basis, using just the district numbers and comparing them what we're pumping over there, my calculations show that in 2013, about 74 million gallons of water we sent to Waterville. That was what I would call clean water, non-sewer water. 2014, that went up to like 80, a little over 80 million gallons. And that represents a 64, almost 65% of the water pumped and 67% in 2014. So it's a pretty considerable volume of water that we're talking about here. First Park system, believe it or not, even though that's a fairly tight, fairly new system, that also had some clean water. 2013 was about 1.6 million gallons, and in 2014 it was about just under 1 million gallons. About 20% of what we're sending to the KMD meter is clean water. And clean water can come from anything from leaky sewer manholes the town owns. It could come from leaky sewer mains in the street the town owns. Could come from leaky side lateral pipes that the customers own. Could come from sump pumps, perimeter drains, roof drains, catch basins that we don't know, that everybody, you know, as far as we know, all the catch basins have been removed from the system, but, you know, there could be one out there that nobody's aware of that's still feeding to it. And yard drains is another one that sometimes people, for lack of any other place to put it, they'll put it into the sewer system. The kind of dollars we're looking at here, and just what I did is I took the total number of gallons of clean water, and then I calculated it based upon what Waterville's charging us, both at the KMD site and the Webb Road site. In 2013, the Webb Road clean water had a tally of about $107,000. That's water we're not collecting revenue for, but everybody's paying Waterville to handle. That also includes our cost to pump it to Waterville as well. 2014, I've calculated about $115,000, and that's just the Webb Road. First Park, 2013 was about $13,000 annually, and in 2014 about $8,000. So everybody kind of knew we had an I&I problem, you know, a lot of inflow and infiltration. There's been studies over the years that have been done throughout the system. Some of those I've looked at here, you know, over the last several months that I've been working. But it's something that is, in the past when we had the treatment plant, it wasn't a big of an issue because we could handle those big spikes, and it really wasn't a big cost driver because we were able to just treat the larger portion of water, send it out, and still meet all the regulatory standards. But now that we're pumping to Waterville, the costs are really hitting home. So, and I think Doug has seen that over the last several years where we've been kind of pulling out of reserve to supplement the budget to be able to kind of stay afloat. So a couple things that I wanted to do, or at least talk to you folks about starting to do. First, we talked about last meeting, setting up the sump pump inspection program, which we've had I've had 37 customers contact me and set up scheduled appointments. I have done one inspection so far. We're basically starting everything in March when things get a little warmer, and then we're gonna move on from there. So 37 customers, just under 5% of the total number of customers we have called. So we got 796 customers, so it's gonna take me quite a while to go through all those inspections, and, so that's one aspect of it. The other, but that's only, as I said earlier there, that's only one piece of the puzzle. I mean, that just tells us how many sump pumps, how many roof drains, how many perimeter drains that we have in the system, but it doesn't really tell us if there are leaky pipes coming in, our own leaky pipes in the town's collection system, and our sewer manholes. We really need to nail down where all this is coming from and try to end up with a priority list, which is what my goal would be, as to try to get the low-hanging fruit, you know, the biggest bang for our buck first, and really start trying to whittle down that cost. We'll never get it all, we'll never get 100%, we'll never see, you know, $100,000 savings, but we need to make an effort to start really closing in on that, because it's never gonna get any better. It's just gonna get higher and higher and higher as costs go up, so. So one aspect of phase one, what I consider phase one, would be the sump pump inspections, which are underway. And like I said, we'll start in March. The other thing that I've been looking at is the possibility of putting a couple continuous flow meters in the system, so we can start narrowing in on where this water's coming from. We have a pretty good idea that some of it's coming from Oak Street, Oak Hill Drive, Allagash Drive, I've been told, are areas where there's probably some pretty decent flow. Water Street's probably another one, but we don't have anything for numbers. We just know, just based upon, you know, some of the inspections that were done in the late 80s, I think it was, that they were done. We know some of the areas, but we really don't know anything that we could, you know, put our hands on to say, if we do this project, we'll remove 2 million gallons, and that the payback will be this. I mean, that's really what I want to get to, so I can approach you folks with projects and say, okay, this is going to cost us $30,000, but the payback is 4 months, and we're, you know, so that's the kind of thing that I'm looking for. The meters are not cheap, though. To lease a meter is about, I'm looking at 2 different meter sites. One would be where Water Street comes into Main Street, and then the other would be up on where Pleasant Street intersects with Oak Street. The metering cost to lease meters for those 2 sites is around $14,000. Option 2 would be to purchase the flow meters, which looks like the cost is around $17,000, but you own the meters. The leasing option is just for a 6-month period. You lease them for 6 months, you get the data, and then the meters are gone. So I'm kind of looking at the 2 options as far as what makes the most sense, and then when I get some more definitive numbers and a more clear direction as to which way I would suggest we go. I mean, the other thing is the budget, is that, you know, this is, my budget's pretty tight in the sewer department. We do have some reserve funds, but those are pretty well depleted too, so. Tonight I just wanted to kind of present this to you folks, what I'm looking at and where I think we need to go, and it's just the question is, how are we gonna get there, so.
Are these, are these meters something that, if we own one, could be moved around, Boyd, or is it a permanent installation when you put it in?
No, that's the benefit, is that I could, if we purchased the meters, in my mind, purchasing makes the most sense, because even though it's a slightly more expensive, I can take that meter, put it in a different part of town, monitor that for 6 months, 12 months, whatever, you know, a month, you know, whatever we have, and I can move those throughout the system.
Really, all you need is a good rainstorm, right, to monitor each area?
Yeah, I mean, and what you try to do is you try to do it over a span of springtime and then summer flows.
You know,
So you're really seeing that, you know, you're really seeing that curve where the spike comes down, and you can start looking at, okay, we have more of a spike in Water Street than we do in Oak Street, so we start kind of focusing our efforts in that direction, so. And there's a lot of things that come after this, like video inspection of the lines, trying to see where the water's coming from. Again, the sump pumps will be part of that as well, the inspection for that, but, there's a couple ways you can do it. Continuous flow meting, it seems like that's the way most systems are doing this. Augusta has 11 that they own, and what they found is they used to lease them, but they found over the period of time it was much cheaper for them to own them. That's actually where I got the idea of owning. Originally I was looking at leasing them, because that's what Waterville does, Water Facilities leases them. But the engineer down at Augusta said that they've had some pretty good luck with owning them. It's a little more expensive up front, but you do get to keep them and use them long-term.
So you can keep moving them out on the system until you find out where that water's coming from, right?
Right.
Once you see a,
Right, well, the other benefit too is, in my mind, is if you own them, you put it in, you do a repair, let's say we replace a section of main, you know, you can keep that flow meter right there and you can see the, you know, how much you really did remove.
Right.
You know, so there's and that's usually you get the metering at the beginning if you're leasing it, and then you replace the main, but the only spot you can see if you made a difference is down at the main pump station when I see the flows. So this will kind of give us some direct impact, but, and especially because it's not a lot more cost than what a leasing, you know, meter is. So that's kind of the way I'm leaning, but again, at $17,000, I have to talk with Doug about our budget. And I don't believe I have that in the budget, so whether that would come out of reserve or, I have called up DEP, to talk to them to see if there's any grant opportunities. And they have about 7,000 in an account right now that they were kind of looking for a place to put it on, that he suggested that if I, submit a letter to him and he and his boss find it acceptable, that they may float us some or all of that 7,000, which would help take some of the bite out. The caveat to that is I would have to give them the report when we're done saying, you know, here's what your money did for us. It allowed us to, you know, focus on these areas, so. I think the end game is no matter what we do, we have to figure out where all this is coming from, and we have to come up with a, you know, a strategy and how we're gonna deal with this and how we're gonna, you know, it's gonna take time. We just can't go out and drop millions of dollars in a system. We're gonna have to be creative in how we move forward, I think, from a funding standpoint and what we go after first. Again, make sure we get the biggest bang for our buck, so.
yeah, I think you need to know the flows before you can figure out what the payback is gonna be. Maybe the payback is so long it isn't worth fixing a main, you know, if the payback is 25 to 30 years, but if it's 3 or 4 months or something, it's worth doing.
Right, well, one of the things I've been telling.
You're kind of flying with the seat of your pants until you know that.
Right, and one of the things I've been telling, especially with these, the calls I've been getting for the home inspections for the sump pumps, you know, some of the people are concerned, you know, am I gonna get, you know, is there a penalty because I've got a sump pump in there? I said, right now, we're just trying to collect the data. I said, I don't know if we have 6 sump pumps in our system or 600. So, you know, the example I use with people is if we find out there's only 6 sump pumps in the system, probably not gonna be a high priority to go after those sump pumps. Obviously, we're gonna target something else and we're gonna, you know, let those be. If we've got 600 sump pumps, probably something that needs to be considered as far as in the whole scheme of the flow, you know, situation, so.
No, I think your rationale sounds pretty good to buy them, to monitor, to see where we are. And I'm sure the payback, if we do find some issues, will probably be pretty significant, if we can fix them easily. Is it necessary or practical or the best idea to have 2 going at once? You said that if you did one on Water Street and one on Pleasant Street and Oak Street, you could compare their flows. But if you find they both spike way up and go down, it could mean that both have a serious problem, or it could mean that neither of them have a serious problem.
Right.
So, but if one does go up and down, the other doesn't, we know that there's probably a serious problem with one of the 2.
Right.
One of the reasons I asked or took this direction was, do we need 2 of them? If you bought one and moved that around strategically from the worst case scenario, obviously you have 2, you can do it quicker.
Right.
Do the first 2 and then move to another 2
Yeah.
spots. So I guess it's a matter of degree. We could borrow the money
Yeah.
at a fairly low interest rate if we think the payback's gonna be pretty quick, if we don't have it budgeted.
Right.
You know, if DEP gives us half and, you know, be worth borrowing $7,000 or $8,000 to buy the second one, realizing we will have to pay it back over the course of a couple of years through the sewer budget. So I think, you know, it sounds like a good plan, and I would say the sooner the better. If this is the best time to do it, then.
Yeah, I guess really what it boils down to for me is it's a numbers crunch, right? I mean, I know how much we're getting down here to the plant, and I know how many gallons a minute I'm pumping out. So if I picked those 2 spots because those were intersections of multiple pipe locations. So let's say I put one on Water Street, and I didn't see much activity on there throughout this 6-month period, or throughout the spring season, you know, then I gotta wait another year before I move it to a different location. So that was the only benefit, is what I was thinking is, all right, if I put 2 out there, then